Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, a show about writing and publishing with your host, J.F. Garrard.
Welcome to another episode of The Artsy Raven, and today we have two special guests, Devinder and Jesse. So Devinder Thiara lives in the Greater Toronto Area, where he contributes to tabletop role-playing games, such as Dune, John Carter of Mars, Conan, Adventure in the Age Undreamed of, and the new Marvel Multiverse RPG. While much of his youth was spent skipping school and loitering in the multiplex theaters of the Eaton Center, downtown bookstores and arcades, he eventually went to the University of Guelph, where he earned a degree in English literature. While at Guelph, he met Jesse Scoble, who was also pursuing an English degree, and a lifelong friendship was forged. Jesse, after getting his BA in English, worked in the tabletop industry, working on projects like A Game of Thrones, D20, and Silver Age Sentinels, before moving into writing for video games. Over 20 years, he's contributed to games such as Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey, Far Cry 5, HyperScape, and even Webkinz and Wizard101. Jesse currently lives in Montreal. So Dev and Jesse have collaborated on multiple projects during their careers, but recently decided to put their efforts into their own creation, Dead Money, a black and white horror comic. They formed a small team of friends and brought on Tomias Era to illustrate it, and last year published their first issue. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about, so you guys met at Guelph, and then, so you were both, did you both want to be writers? Is that why you ended up there?
I don't think so. So I went to Guelph. So I was living in the Ottawa area at the time. I finished high school there, and I had met a few people who were at Guelph, and I quite liked the university, the feel of the campus, and it was sort of just far enough from home that I could be away from home, but I could drive home in a day if I had to. If something happened and I had to get into a car and drive back, I could make it within 7-8 hours. Um, and I came out of a high school program where I found success in English and writing and the humanities, and less success in maths and sciences. So I was gravitating more towards programs like that. I didn't really have much of an idea about wanting to write, although I had done a short story in my last year at high school that had gotten read to the class one day, and gotten a lot of surprisingly good compliments and things from classmates, which is, I think, pretty rare at a high school level. And that was sort of the very first, twinkle of something. And then, I went to Guelph for those reasons. And at the time, it had a very strong English department, although the school is generally known for other things like the veterinary college and agricultural business. So some very interesting roommates and whatnot. But while I was doing that, I got involved in the game club there, the role playing board game and card game club, which I had some experience with at Ottawa University and similar things, and that's how I crossed paths with Dev. Was in my second year there.
Oh, okay. So Dev, how come you ended up at the University of Guelph?
Well, it was not my first choice nor my second. It was actually my last choice. I was dead set on going to University of Toronto's Trinity College, but the acceptance rates for Trinity College is very small. They had a particular program I liked, which was called the Arts and Sciences double major degree. And I was, trying very hard to get into it. I had a very high average coming out of high school, but it's still, they only took like 12 people a year or something like that. So I ended up choosing Guelph because they gave me a scholarship, and I thought it would be, I'd go there a year, maybe a year later, I'd try to transfer back to Trinity College again or something. So I did not have any intentions of actually being in Guelph, where was it my first choice. But having grown up and lived in Toronto my entire life, it was definitely a different experience. A very small, city compared to Toronto, very much a different culture on campus, etc., than what I had known from my friends who went to University of Toronto and York University, which are far, far larger in a sense, right? And I ended up really liking it there and meeting some folks, and just deciding that Guelph is a great place. I'm gonna just kind of go there. And again, as Jesse alluded, my first year, having known nobody in Guelph, I knew absolutely nobody. I ended up going to the games club because I was a big fan of gaming culture and gaming stuff, and there I met Jesse, and we ended up forming a pretty good friendship. And kind of, it's gone on now to 30 plus years, and yeah, we're just, I'm glad I met him. It's, we've been through a lot of life events together now, and we decided eventually to start putting our skills together to put some projects out there, pretty much. So coincidence, serendipity, I don't know what you want to call it. It is, a lot of life seems to work that way. So
Okay, now both of you have experience in games. Like, so did that help, I guess, you think? Is that what's part of what inspired your project? I mean, like, why do a comic book? Like, in a way, you worked on more, um, how do you say it, like video games or like a storytelling thing too. So
Right.
did you not want to do a video game instead of a comic book? Like, I mean, if you have a
Well,
choice, I don't know.
yeah, no, I mean it's a complicated question. So when I graduated from Guelph, I kind of stumbled into working for a tabletop role-playing game company. I figured with an English degree, I would be a journalist or a waiter or one of those traditional roles, right? With a writing background. And a good friend of mine who was a few years advanced for me at Guelph, he had started a tabletop company, and I kind of fell into working with him. And that was a great experience. We did some really neat stuff. I really learned how to be a professional writer and editor. I work with other writers, work with teams. The tabletop industry, as you may know, is not super financially lucrative, not nor particularly stable. And eventually, the company, couldn't make it anymore. And so I transitioned into video game space where there was something of a pathway, a difficult one, but there was, I knew a lot of folks who had done that. And I really didn't do a lot of traditional writing in over most of my career in terms of short stories or novels and so forth. I've been doing more of it recently, and I've dabbled here and there, but it was, there was so much of writing in the day job that it was hard to find the time and the bandwidth in the evenings or whatever to do extra personal writing on the side. But I had so the origin for Dead Money, I mean, to go back a second, so I had done about 5 years of the pen and paper company that had stopped rather abruptly. I went down to Texas for a year to work at a computer game company as a lore writer, basically writing, taking elements from the game and writing stories and fiction that we put up on the website. So it wasn't stuff that was necessarily in the game, but it was related and official and all connected. And I had gotten quite heavily into the film scene down there through the Austin Film Festival, which has a fantastic showcase of movies, but they bring in writers for a weekend conference. And so I got to go and hear all these, amazing folks like Vince Gilligan and John August speak about their, productions on various things. And I also read a whole lot of scripts as a way to volunteer for the festival to get a pass to festival time. And they gave me a stack of like 50 scripts or something and said, read these and tell us what you think, rank them, kind of. So I was very much in that headspace, and I was also reading a lot of border stories and sort of Texas Mexico stuff and things about the desert down in New Mexico. And after a year there, my time at that company finished, and I needed to get myself back from Austin to back home, back to Canada. So I called Dev up and said, "Hey, if I help fly you down here, could you help me drive my stuff back home?" And he was like, "Yeah, okay, I can figure that out." And when he came down, he had pitched the idea of, "Hey, why don't we try to write something together? We have a long drive ahead of us." And I was, as I said, very much in this movie space. So I said, hey, why don't we try to write kind of an action movie, something using some of these elements, some kind of action thing, relatively small, contained, focus idea, but kind of a Western themed thing with these elements. Anyway, that was kind of the genesis of it.
Okay. And how about you, Dev? Like after university, you went off to work, and then were you thinking
yeah,
about
I mean,
writing?
I had finished the literature degree and then was off finding work and realized that again, much like Jesse, that writers don't exactly have a lot of opportunities to to make good money. Or I had quite a bit of student loans already, so I ended up actually going back to do a second degree in computer science and ended up
Oh,
working in IT and then eventually finance and banking for quite a lot number of years actually. And off and on, and sort of lived through some of the writing journeys Jesse was having at the time, and occasionally was able to help out, edit a bit, or read some of his stuff, or collaborate on things now and then. Then eventually it came to the point, as Jesse said, with that trip down to Texas, Austin, to help him get up here. I realized that I was kind of passing my life by on things I really wanted to do. I don't have particularly a lot of passion for finance and banking and IT, so I'm like, I have to make a choice. Like I kind of get it. Financially, it's much more stable to have these type of jobs, these skills in this career. But ultimately, I went back to my initial passion I talked about. The reason I wanted to go to Trinity College was to pursue a double-sided life of both science and arts, basically. And I had neglected my arts side of my soul for far too long, basically. So, and we, talked a lot on this 3 day, 3.5, maybe even close to 4 days drive up. It was a quite a journey where we experienced quite a bit of the U.S. and all the different states. We went from a desert temperate climate all the way up to Ontario where it was snowing in the middle of winter again. So it's a lot to take in 3.5 days or so. And we ended up deciding we're gonna do something. And the Dead Money Project came out as a screenplay, which we wanted to try and encapsulate our journey across America and what it meant to be American and what Americana meant historically, because we had stopped obviously in a lot of different places, and we realized that each one of these little towns and places had their own unique culture, their story, and kind of what it was. And we were admittedly tourists during all of this time, but it gave us a sense of the breadth and the spread of the land, and we wanted to try and capture some of that in what we were trying to do. So thus we started this. Initially, I was actually very resistant to a Western because I didn't feel the genre had really much to really give in the modern times, as it were. I thought it was something that belonged in the 60s and 70s, and it kind of been already explored. And really, what we as two Canadians, what exactly are we going to contribute in this space, right? So it turns out quite a bit. So I had dismissed it, but then it kind of kept boring. The worm had already kind of bored into my brain, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I started doing research, and then I kind of put together after having dismissed it and made fun of Jesse for some length about this particular thing to do. I actually put together a proposal with characters, with a plot, and everything like that. And I think Jesse was somewhat surprised, and then we just went from there and just started creating we feel a fairly unique take and story on what it felt to go across America in that particular time of our lives and kind of cover what that meant. And that
now
was
what?
that was more or less the origins of that screenplay. And then let's just continue on to where we got to the comic, because we realized after getting the screenplay done, we pitched it, went out there to try and get it made into a movie for everyone to tell us that this thing was going to cost like $200 million, and it
Uh,
required extensive sets, and it's based in basically pointing out all the problems of why you don't make an expensive ensemble cast in the past movie with monsters and things like that, and why the first movie every person who's a nobody produces is set in a small cabin with two cameras and four actors, and that's it, right? So we're like, okay, understood. So we then decided we could do it as a comic book because that's the closest equivalent in an art form to be able to take a screenplay and do sort of essentially the layout for all of that. And it's within a budget we could essentially afford to tell that story. So that is the origins of Dead Money as a Western horror comic book, essentially. So I hope
now,
that covers that.
yeah, but was it hard trying to find artists? Like, I'm assuming you guys didn't want to do the art by yourselves voluntarily.
Oh, my stick figures are terrible. They
Yeah, and mine are worse than his. So
Yeah.
maybe as bonus content. I had tried trying to do a comic in some way for a very long time. In
Mhm.
part because in the video game industry, there are so many fabulous illustrators. There's these concept artists that just do amazing, beautiful work. However, they often take a week to do a piece or a day or whatever, but they really put a ton of energy into it. And trying to convince someone to join your passion project, your voluntary passion project is quite challenging. So I never really made much progress. And I tried with various shorts and various things, like, oh, here's a 5-page thing, here's a 10-page thing, here's a whatever, all this point. And and I say it just kind of never worked out. But you were asking, why didn't we do this as a game? Well, there's sort of a couple of answers to that, but part of it is I'm not very technical, certainly not on a programming side. And yes, there are a lot more tools these days, but that's sort of the day job, and I wanted something different. And also some video games, especially on a project like Assassin's Creed or something, you can do some really fantastic storytelling, but not only does it involve these enormous teams, but it involves all these different people who have ideas and opinions and their stakeholders that kind of push and pull your story, and it becomes a collaborative effort, and you get something really cool out of the chemistry. But I definitely don't feel that it is my thing at the end of the project and the process. So I wanted something that we would have a much stronger authorial voice and control over. And we're both a little bit older now, a little more secure financially. So I said, well, why don't we take some of the resources we have from some of these little side projects we occasionally do, little freelance things, and basically try to hire an artist and say, okay, we're going to pay you, for some character design, for some sample pages, and let's see what happens with that. And the initial investment was fairly modest. And if it was a terrible, connection, if there was no chemistry there, that's fine. We could walk away. It wouldn't be a real pain or a problem. And if it ends up being something that really connects and clicks, then we can decide, if we're going to go forward with it. So I had the again, talking about serendipity, this luck to go to a conference, a cultural conference in Argentina, about 3 years ago now, 3, 4 years ago, called Mika, and it brought in people from all sorts of different internationals as speakers and kind of experts, and locals, a lot of local game developers. And I was there as part of the video game track. But one of the folks I met there, Mishka De Caro, I clicked with pretty well. And Mishka and I, that there was a good sort of sense of each other, I think. And we stayed in contact after the conference. And we had talked a little bit about, oh, we should do some kind of game together, like a board game or a role-playing game or a something. And when Dev and I started talking again about, we have a little bit of time and a little bit of money that we can invest in this project, I reached out to Michigan and said, hey, do you know any comic artists by any chance? Because I figured it might be more economical, might be a little easier to kind of work with somebody. And and really luckily Mishka did. They actually had they knew a whole bunch of comic artists and had even done some work in the comic space before, and said, yeah, no, they'd be very happy to introduce us to a few folks. And so we basically interviewed or reviewed portfolios from several different artists, and eventually settled on working with Tomas, who has been fantastic. I mean, he's very experienced. He's a great illustrator. He really knows the vibe, and there's this real interesting kind of synchronicity about um, you know as we are Canadians, but Canada does have a Western culture and obviously a New World culture. And in Argentina, they recognize the cowboy culture pretty strongly as well. And so, although we're telling a very American story, we have kind of our own angles and shades to it. So,
Okay. Maybe let me ask Dev this question. Like, what was the most challenging aspect of this project?
As usual, whenever we work on our projects independently or together, we do like to challenge ourselves a bit. So as students of literature and history, we do like to go into different mediums and kind of see if our skills are applicable in any of these things. So in the past, we had written obviously formal essays, we had written short stories, we had written material for gaming, material for tabletop games, material for all kinds of things, basically. So at the end of the day, as we've matured and gotten older, I think we know that the core skill is storytelling in all of this, and it's the ability to communicate, it's the ability to resonate with your audience and know what they are. And then, after that, you have to develop some technical skills for that particular genre or that particular art form to properly be able to work in that medium with other professionals and to present a product that's eventually going to be a good quality product, essentially, right? So the challenge for us was, having never written a comic book before, never having gone into this space, how do we take what we know and our skills and our abilities and basically do it right. And that was the big thing for us, was to maintain a certain level of quality, a certain amount of professionalism, be able to do that. So I think I feel like we've always done a pretty good job in trying to understand what the nuances of a new art form are and kind of get all of that right. So when we, transitioned to do a screenplay, we had to learn how to properly format a script, how scenes work, how all the extra dialogue that is required in the margins to be able to properly tell a screenplay, basically, right? Like, we're not writing a novel, we're not writing like a story, short story. So all of those things had to be learned. And then for the comic book, same thing. I had to go find sources and figure out what's required. How do you write a comic script? How do you interact with the folks on it like that? So that to me was the challenging part, was adapting our skill set, adapting how we tell stories to make sure that we don't shortchange the specific art form that we're trying to get into and do, basically. So, and we've done enough of these sort of transitions in different mediums that we're reasonably competent, I think, at this point to be able to at least produce something that's half decent. So that is the challenge and sort of the reward which we wanted to do. And as I said, Jesse and I both grew up reading comics and having a love for that particular medium, and we always wanted to do something. And we said, all right, we're at a point where we have the time and the money to do a small experiment. Let's just go for it. Because I think that's part of the advice I can give, or if we want to talk about sort of how folks can get out there, is you just have to do it. Like I keep trying to tell some of my nieces and nephews that, you can wait till you have the perfect idea, but that's often just not going to do anything for you, because execution is the part that everyone seems to forget that you need to actually do, right? Like, you can take something that's even maybe not a perfect idea, and as if you execute, that's where it is. If, and then a lot of folks are like, well, I don't know how to execute. It's like, well, let's start from there. I don't know what to do next, and what's the first step? First step is, okay, figure out what a comic book script is. How do you write one? What tools do you need? What's next? You need an artist. You need this. You need that, and you just go from there. And I think that's the part where I really hope people just find that internal confidence to just do it and just, you know, accept it, whether it's success or failure, because you will learn from both sides of having just gone out and tried something, basically, right? And I'm glad we did, and we ended up with something that worked. So that's hopefully that answered your question there.
Okay, now let's take a step back. Can you give me a
Sure.
synopsis about what Dead Money is about?
Sure, you want to handle this, Jesse, or?
Sure. So, Dead Money is a Western horror comic. It's set in 1871, and it starts off introducing a disparate cast of characters, a whole bunch of folks who are basically traveling out of Texas, heading out west towards San Diego to find new lives. Some of them are, running from their demons. Some of them are running for, running from secrets, things that they've done. Others are looking for opportunities. And we tried to encompass as many characters as we could, many viewpoints, many sort of interesting origin points, in order to kind of give us a lot of variety, a lot of characters to bounce off each other as we go forward. And without sort of spoiling anything, but sort of hinting at it, it's pretty much within the first issue. There's a catastrophic accident, and a number of folks, these survivors, get stranded in the desert, and they have to learn how to work together to survive, and deal with the conflicts of the desert, of each other, and this malignant horror that is sort of hidden beneath the sands there. Um, so that's the sort of pitch for it. And we're telling it over a series of issues. It's I think of it as a limited series in the old comic terms. We're estimating 10 issues. We've got it scripted out for the first five, basically. And one of the things that we learn as we adapt from the screenplay to the comic form is where the story needs to be condensed a little bit, where it needs to expand, how much space we need for actions in the art to really live. Um, and yeah, I think that's kind of the core element. The first issue was released last year in late 2025. We are finishing issues 2 and 3 now, and depending when this airs, we may be deep into 4 and 5, if all goes well and everyone continues to sort of um, the chemistry is improving, the workflow is improving, we understand each other better, there's a lot more trust that's kind of built up, and all of those pieces are sort of coming together more quickly and more efficiently.
Now, because this is an independent comic, how are you selling it? Like, is it online? People buy it online? Are you
Yeah,
talking to stores or?
so primarily we did a Kickstarter, and that's our method of delivery essentially, and sales effectively together. So the first Kickstarter did like quite well for us, far beyond our expectations, to be honest, but still ended up with a small shortfall in terms of covering all the costs for issue one. And part of that is just we had to learn a lot from some of our mistakes that are just going to happen inevitably, in just terms of how you go about printing, producing, and shipping stuff, right? We didn't realize like trying to uh, ship things from the US to Canada would be quite so painful, actually, right, in terms of cost. But that it is what it is, right? So hopefully next time around we'll do a bit of a better job. But that's primarily our selling thing. So we're set up on comics, like drive-through comics, so people can buy digital copies there. We're obviously hoping eventually to get onto Amazon and then local distribution for comic book stores and things like that. So all of these are in um, some degree of we're pursuing basically. And as we have more issues available, more opportunities will start, I think, opening up for where you can pick up the comic. But for now, it's essentially it's just the links on our Kickstarter and links through our drive-through comics and the backer kit that we use to ship everything out is where it's available. So that's all we have for now, and we are obviously looking at and pursuing anyone and everywhere who's willing to help us sort of carry your comic. You're more than welcome to contact us to
Cool.
see where that goes. So yeah.
Like, do you have any advice for people that want to write their own comic?
So I think that it's very hard as a writer to break into comics if you have no artistic ability, no artist. It's something that it's repeated over and over. Basically, you can't just send a script into Marvel or DC or Image or Boom or Dark Horse or Dynamite or nobody really cares about a script if you have no name. I mean, I suppose if you're you know
Yeah, your fame
Stephen,
is different. Yeah,
Stephen
Yeah.
King or Brandon Sanderson or whatever,
yeah.
but for the most part. So it's very hard. If you're an artist, you can do a portfolio and you can get work that way, and that's certainly a whole lot easier. I'm sure it's not easy, but it's a whole lot easier. So what I would say is if you're trying kind of our route as an independent, really trying to break in, is you make something small. And I would say something smaller than Dead Money. Dead Money is a little bit ambitious, but we're leaning on 20, 30 years of professional experience in other things, but related fields. So we're kind of building that at the foundation. But if you have even a one issue comic, I think is perfectly fine. Or if you're able to find an anthology where maybe you could submit a 4-page comic or a 6-page comic or something along those lines, where if you can find an artist that is not terribly expensive. It's some money, some investment, but that you're basically investing in yourself and in your career. So that's where you find someone who can execute the ideas that you're thinking of, and it's very much a collaborative process. You have to have a really good trust in the artist and give them a chance to shape the story and but at the same time, you also want to make sure that is the story you're trying to present, right? So you find that element. And then if you get that first piece sort of in your portfolio, whether it's, again, a 3-page thing or a full issue or a 3-issue series, you can then start using that to show to people and say, hey, look, I've done this thing. And where I found, in life, it's very easy to get someone to look at a video game or a video game trailer or a movie trailer. I'm sure you have this experience, JF, that trying to get someone to read a book who is not immediately invested in your work, it's very hard, right? You hand them this tome with all of these pages and all these words, and like, yeah, sure, I'll read that one day, and it just gets sort of left aside. But comics, everybody's happy to pick up a comic and check out, so that makes it really easy as a sell. Anyway, so that kind of helps on the getting yourself out there and getting connected with things.
Okay, Dev. Any final words for newbies?
Yeah, again, as I said, part of it is just have that internal fire to just just start doing it. But again, today's space is if you're just going digital, you have a lot more ability to do that because the costs are relatively cheap. You just need, fairly few tools and you can just generally practice at them. And, it's not going to hurt you financially too much to just get a web page going and submit some stuff out there. And there's obviously venues and places that have, they'd welcome, new folks into submitting things like that. And you just hope you get something out there and it catches some notice or becomes people are interested in it, and then you build and you build and you practice every day. Like that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a
That's all
lot
I
of
can do.
K-dramas and C-dramas. They're like
Yeah,
based on comics or like web novels, and then somehow
right.
some studio picked it up because they need ideas at the end of the day. So, okay, that's
Exactly. And that's what I would recommend. If you can do like a web series comics or you have that skill, that talent, that's a great place to start, you know.
okay. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today, both of you.
Okay.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was good talking about all of these things.
Okay,
Thanks.
cool. The Artsy Raven is produced by Dark Heel Express. Introduction voiceover by Chris Gorman. Music by Tim Moore. Please access your bonus content on the Patreon website. Thank you very much for listening, and please stay safe.